Good morning. It's good to have a full room. I'm Phillips, Superintendent of the North St. Paul-Maplewood-Oakdale School District. And our district, along with the Columbia Heights District, is co-presenting a session on lessons learned in moving from a half-day to all-day, full-day, everyday kindergarten. A little of the genesis, our district is in the 8th year of having all-day, everyday kindergarten. I've been here 9 years. I did kind of a weird route to the superintendency. I was a preschool teacher and a kindergarten teacher. So I'm very passionate about all-day K and early childhood. I'm loving this conference. Our district coughed up $1.24 million every year to fund all-day, everyday kindergarten. And it was such a priority. When I arrived 9 years ago, we were $1 million in the hole. But our school board was totally committed to this. So despite cutting $23 million from the budget over a 6-year period, they never touched that $1.24 million that they earmarked for all-day, everyday K. And why? Well, we were a district that was really increasing our free and reduced lunch numbers. Right now we have 54.6% of our kindergarten students qualify for free and reduced lunch, and 48.8% of our district-wide kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. The slide on the right shows you the trajectory we've had of increasing our students of color in the district. We've done a lot of work with Eric Jensen's work on poverty, and when we think of the vocabulary development of these kids, when you think of a child from a low socioeconomic family that hears 13 million words by the time they're 4 years old versus a middle class student that hears 26 million words versus a high socioeconomic student that hears 46 million words. We knew that we needed to work on literacy, language development, basic math skills, and so forth. So what we did with this program is we give our kids the gift of time. In our half-day program, the kids have 150 minutes a day. And with our all-day, every day, they increase that by 240 more minutes a day, 390 minutes a day. We saw results. All of our minority subgroup gaps are steadily closing. And despite the demographics that our school district has greater free and reduced lunch numbers and greater diversity than the state average, our gap in reading grades 3 through 5, our gap is 23.6%, with the state's being 33.1%, and our gap in grades 3 through 5 in math is 21%, with the state being 35.2%. So we've seen results. It's money that has really paid great dividends for our students and our families and our school district. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Kelly now, the superintendent from Columbia Heights.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's such a pleasure to be able to be here to be able to chat with you today about all-day K. Patty has one up on me because she's been a kindergarten teacher. I've had a passion for early education for a good many years. And in the Columbia Heights Public School District, if you don't know where we're located, we are a first-rate suburb of Minneapolis. And we're roughly about 3,000 students. And I used to say we were a suburban school district and with a growing urban core. And now I just say we're an urban school district because in the last 13 years, we've gone from 30% minority to 70% minority, and our free and reduced lunch count is now 72%. So in forecasting around the year 2000, where we were headed, we knew we needed to make some changes to our system and prepare for the kindergartners and the students we would be receiving. The impetus really came with ESL, as we called it back in that day. We had a good many immigrants coming to the community who had really smart brains, but had a language deficiency in that they came to us with sometimes 0 English words. And so we started a pilot over at Highland Elementary School that said, let's give everyone the traditional half-day program, and in addition to that, let's infuse an ESL teacher into the kindergarten program and then have the students stay in the afternoon. That pilot was so successful that we asked ourselves, why wouldn't we be doing this with all of our students? Because our poverty rate was also increasing. We did that 13 years ago And our school board made a huge commitment to the amount of money that we would put into that program. Much as Patty has said, we went through statutory operating debt, budget cuts, but we always kept and held the all-day free kindergarten program harmless. What it evolved to, and as far as configuration, Michele DeWitt, who's a principal at Highland, will talk about, but that was kind of the why we did it. The cost on the budget was hard. It was an uphill battle. In our general fund, it was about 2% of our general fund. We poured in about $685,000 a year in addition. But we figured that if they aren't learning to ready to read, they won't be able to learn beyond grade 3. We figured over the course of the 13 years, we spent about $8 million out of our general fund, but we were committed to model our talk. And basically, we were very relieved and grateful to the legislature when they funded all-day K this year. Looking back, it's been quite a journey, but as we look at it, our EL students have really benefited. When we looked at our results this last year, all of our EL students that were in kindergarten and in the elementary scored better or above the state proficiency rates. And so for us, we moved to collaboration and infusing our ESL teachers not only in the kindergarten but throughout the elementaries. As much as Patty has said, we also have improved our test scores for our littlest scholars on a consistent basis by helping to close the achievement gap. So overall, the commitment, the time on task proved to be for our students, and you see one of them up there, if we wanted to get them together and prepare them for tomorrow's workforce, it wasn't that this was an enhancement for our students, it was essential. Thank you. I'm going to pass the baton to the two principals from the districts.
Good morning, my name is Jenna Peters, and I too am very passionate about this work. I was a former kindergarten teacher in a full-day program and now building principal, so this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And so we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, from a leadership perspective, some of the things that you might be thinking of as you prepare to make this transition in your districts. So one of the key things that I think we really put a lot of time and thought into in our district was the professional development piece. As you look at kindergarten teachers making a shift from teaching in that half-day program to a full-day program. And thinking about some of the training and support you're going to need to provide your kindergarten teachers so that they feel really successful and prepared to make this transition. And then also kind of thinking about who are you going to bring on board to lead this professional development. Do you have teacher leaders in your district that you could rely on? You know, from your district staff office, do you have people there, principals? Who do you bring on board to lead this training? As I look back on kind of the journey and talking with kindergarten teachers in our district, one of the big things that we remember back 7 years ago was just that idea of getting kindergarten teachers on the same page. You're going to have kindergarten teachers who are really excited about this transition, and then you may have kindergarten teachers who aren't as excited. So providing the time and space and time for dialogue around this transition, and again, that kind of ties to that professional development piece. Making sure that your message is clear about what you hope to gain as a result of a full-day program, and then bringing your teachers on board and validating and affirming some of their excitement and also their trepidation. So thinking about, in terms of professional development, what are some of the things that maybe your teachers are going to need? As someone who did teach also briefly in a half-day program, making that shift to an all-day program, that social curriculum piece is huge, because now you are talking about building a community across a full day than just a half day. So thinking about how can you prepare your teachers for the classroom management routines? Are you a district who needs to bring in something like responsive classroom or Love and Logic? What can you do to set up your teachers for success? And then of course that academic curriculum piece. I think one of the big things in our district that we really took a look at is looking at our existing curriculum and how do we take that curriculum and think about like the end of year expectations And then how do we take our curriculum and make sure that it's rigorous enough to meet those end of year expectations, particularly if they're changing as you move from a half day to a full day program. I know that there was a lot of work in our district that was done around the report card in kindergarten. As we looked at those end of year expectations, did our expectations need to change? And so I know that kindergarten teachers across our district worked on developing a report card that was not only matched to standards, but had rubrics that matched so that kindergarten teachers can consistently score kindergartners at those end of year standards. I think another gift that we gave to our teachers was in scheduling. As we moved to that full day program, we made sure to structure common planning time for kindergarten teachers. They're going to need a lot of time to process and talk, and then thinking about what do you hope to gain from that planning time. Are you going to expect grade level meetings? Is going to be a time for professional learning community time? But thinking about how you might structure that time and give that gift of time to your teachers to collaborate. So beyond professional development, I feel like another key piece to moving to this all day, everyday kindergarten is how you're going to communicate with parents. Just like teachers, you're probably going to have parents who are really super excited. Hopefully most of them are very super excited about this great opportunity for their children. But you may have some parents who are a little bit apprehensive as well. And so developing a plan for how you'll communicate this great news in your district, and also like how you can be really proactive in that communication and really positive. So as you think about your communication plan, think about what forms of communication you can use to get the word out to your parents. Any places from your website, the different kinds of mailings you might be able to send home. Who's going to be involved in that communication? I know in our district we had communication that went out from our superintendent, went out from building principals, went out from our communications director, went out from a variety of sources. And then thinking about when that's going to happen, even thinking about a timeline for communication as you map out sort of the key events as you implement all day K. So we were very, very intentional about making that celebratory announcement, which many of you have already probably done. But then things like kindergarten registration night, other key pieces along your implementation journey that parents are going to need to know about. And then what key messages do you want parents to know about? Those need to be positive messages that you send to parents that again address some of the concerns, but also kind of highlight the great benefits to an all-day program. So another thing that I thought that we did is we were careful to address some of the possible questions parents might have. Things like, what will my child's class size be like? Things like, is my child ready? As you heard some of the other speakers this morning talk about. Even is all-day kindergarten developmentally appropriate for kids? Parents are going to have these questions, so the more proactive you can be in addressing some of these concerns and pointing out the high benefits of an all-day program, I think the better. Highlighting some of the things that an all-day program can offer that kids wouldn't get in a half-day program. Things like specialist time, if you have STEM, music, art, phy-ed. The flexibility that additional time provides in really being able to meet the needs of all your students. So that proactive and positive communication piece is really important. And we did include a few examples in our PowerPoint of just some of the different ways that we communicated in our district to get the word out to parents that this was going to be a really great opportunity for their child. So I'm going to turn it over to Michele.
Hi, I'm Michele DeWitt. I'm the principal at Highland Elementary in Columbia Heights. And we have transformed in multiple ways. We continue to transform as we are adding facilities to make this change as well. Highland Elementary was fortunate enough to add on a 6th classroom addition. We opened it up mid-year last year. In this floor plan, you notice that we added 5 kindergarten classrooms and 1 pre-K classroom. This was very intentional work of really the coordinated effort that we had of bringing pre-K and kindergarten together. It's important to know that change doesn't happen overnight. This was a 10-year in the making process to adding classroom space to one elementary that will be carried into another elementary beginning this spring. Things to think about as you move from a half-day to a full-day program. definitely would be classroom space. How many kindergarten classrooms will you need to add? You also need to think about specialist space. Do you need to add space on for art, music, bi-ed, technology, etc.? Things that people don't readily think about when they're thinking about space is also your cafeteria, if you're feeding children breakfast and lunch, and how does this space needs change with the addition of kindergartners staying in your building all day. This classroom is a blow up of one of the classrooms in our addition. The layout, again, was very purposeful when we were planning adding new space to our school, just as we did when we repurposed classrooms prior to the addition, is some consistency when you may have 2 or 3 very large kindergartens that you're using right now, and you're using them in the morning and then again in the afternoon. If you need to double the amount of kindergarten classrooms you have because of all-day kindergarten, you need to think about how are you repurposing other classrooms that you may have for consistency. That was one of the tough parts as a principal, walking families around for tours prior to our addition, is we had to promote the fact that we had these 2 beautiful classrooms for kindergarten, and then we had 3 others that were the same size as a normal classroom that may not have had a restroom inside the classroom or had the same look and feel because they were smaller. But the idea is really promoting that all of the necessary pieces were in the classroom, like a listening center, computers, carpet space, whole group activity space, etc. But if you have the gift of being able to add space, think about things very purposely. We talked about kind of your dream classroom of how much space would you have for carpet? What activities would you utilize on the carpet? And again, how much space would you have for hard surface space? And what activities would happen in the hard surface space? What would play look like in the classroom? Where would that be located? Again, restroom space. I think that's a big piece of planning for all-day kindergarten, is when you have extra bodies in your school all day, is do you have the restroom space to accommodate all the extra people? Extra children leads to extra staff, and staffing is always a consideration when you're looking at all-day kindergarten. The obvious is adding extra kindergarten teachers. We also have had to add specialist time, and whether or not that can be as clean as a single FTE, or if that's FTEs that float within your district. You also need to think about, you have extra lunch and recess time as you're bringing all of your kindergartners in for breakfast and in for lunch every day. You also need to think about your kindergarten or your kitchen staff having extra time to prepare and serve meals. Another piece is intervention teachers. If you're providing intervention for 1 through 5 or 6, more than likely you're going to be providing intervention for kindergarten as well. So thinking about your support staff and how much time that you would add to these teachers. In Columbia Heights, we looked at a half-day versus a full day very practically. And in a half-day program, you can offer reading and math. And if you think about needing to have 90 minutes of literacy and 60 minutes of math instruction in a day, that's what you get. So the opportunity for full-day kindergarten in Columbia Heights, as my superintendent stated, was essential, because we needed to provide lunch for our kindergartners, we needed to provide breakfast for our kindergartners, we needed to have art, music, and physical education, we needed to provide time for writing instruction, we needed time for social studies, science, health, and media skills. And another important piece, as Jenna Peters stated, was the opportunity for kindergartners to participate in responsive classroom. We're a school-wide responsive classroom. Kindergartners are now able to have morning meetings and fully take on responsive classroom with their day as a full day block. There are some logistics on top of just scheduling changes and staffing changes to think about. One is transportation. If you think about adding kindergartners onto your busing, you may see the dollar signs of reducing your midday route, that you're not running your buses midday, but you will be adding kindergartners on to your buses, which would add some routing changes as your buses fill to capacity. You will also need to very carefully look at scheduling specialist teachers to be able to retain common planning time, another integral piece of kindergarten teachers working together. Cafeteria space, if you look at keeping your kitchen staff and your lunch monitors, they're a reduced amount of time. You need to think about how are you scheduling your cafeteria. And then the additional purchase of curricular materials and equipment, because you will need to spread those out over double the amount of classrooms. And it's difficult to share when you're on the same page as far as curriculum. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Community Ed.
And teaching and learning.
So we wanted to spend just a few minutes on quick slides around early childhood education as they relate to full day K. We've just heard quite a bit about some of the things we'll talk about, but to start off, in representing both community education and teaching and learning, we want to show that having both of those perspectives is really important in implementing a high quality full day kindergarten program. So I'm Ryan Strack from the North St. Paul-Maplewood-Oakdale School District.
And I'm Kristen Stuenkel, and I'm the Director of Community Education for Columbia Heights School District. And we really want to affirm what's been said earlier today about the importance of teaching and learning, community education, the school principals and early childhood and kindergarten teachers and staff, that we all work together. That's the only way that this can really be done successfully, is if there is that collaboration.
And talking about some of the programs and funding streams that were discussed earlier, again, working between and across kindergarten and early childhood, we're looking at having comprehensive aligned systems that were described by Anoka Hennepin and Bloomington. And that is to both help you get as much out of the full day K program as you can, but also to help both teaching staff and administrative staff of each program learn what one another does so they can help one another. Many of you may have state early learning scholarships coming into play through both Pathway 1 and Pathway 2 dollars to increase your pre-kindergarten or preschool offerings. Of course, school readiness dollars that were discussed earlier, and what would be ECFE. It's not a new program, ECFE and then early childhood special education. And it's really important to look at the spectrum of services, not just preschool classroom-based type services, but the importance of home visiting services, parent education services, early childhood screening services, and those are all opportunities to start having conversations about what can I do to help my child become more ready for kindergarten.
With that, I also want to mention that as you're using multiple funding sources, there are recommendations or requirements of those, such as with the school readiness dollars, it's really recommended that there's parent education, which is different than parent involvement. So it's really important to be working with your parent educators, licensed parent educators in your district to provide that as well. In our school district, we have incubators, is what Superintendent Kelly refers to them, where our pre-K program is located in the elementary schools. And next year, that will happen in our third location, as Principal DeWitt mentioned that we're doing an expansion at our third elementary. And having these incubators really facilitates both that familiarity for parents and children of the elementary, but also that the pre-K teachers can be working very closely with the kindergarten teachers, doing that curriculum alignment. In our district, all of our curriculum is posted on the Atlas website, where from ECFE through 12th grade, all of the classes are on that curriculum mapping. And then also the kindergarten teachers and pre-K teachers can meet together, can observe each other's classroom for that seamless transition. In our district, we also have a program for the past 5 years called Bridges to Kindergarten. It's a 3-week program, 4 days a week for half day. And this program is co-taught between a kindergarten teacher and an early childhood teacher. We have 25 students in each of those classrooms, and we have particularly invited students who either did not do well on their screening, failed, or were in the gray zone, or students who have not had the early childhood experience. And just as it was mentioned earlier today, that executive functioning, the importance of that this program is not just about preparing them academically, but also with that social emotional development and helping them to calm their bodies, to focus, and to get used to the routines. We also have parent-teacher conferences in the fall and in the spring. And then this year we're implementing a meeting with parents and teachers called Kinder Prep, where the teachers will be speaking with their parents particularly about, during the summer months, what to do to continue to get their child ready for kindergarten. And then we also have community seminars about getting your child ready for kindergarten.
A couple more tools that may be helpful, particularly as you roll out full-day kindergarten, are a getting ready for kindergarten class that we've offered in August before the school year starts. And that actually has children riding the bus, going to the school where they will be attending school, so they can start to get used to some of these routines without all of the other students in the school. And then we've actually done a summer school at the end of the pre-K year, taught by a kindergarten teacher, and this is going to be a half-day program a couple of times a week to try to build some of those skills that, again, may have been missed if the child had not attended something or had a screening score that was of concern.
With the collaboration in curriculum, I've already mentioned Atlas and some of the collaborative meetings. Our early childhood program also uses the responsive classroom approach, and we've adapted it to be developmentally appropriate for our birth to 5 program, but particularly with our 3 and 4-year-old program. So the students are already used to those experiences of the morning meeting, take a break chair, etc. We also have, we align with the Readers and Writers Workshop, and also with using that both summative and formative assessment. So we are tracking how the students are doing, and we're communicating that out as the student prepares for kindergarten.
And then finally, we'll echo what the rest of the presenters have said today, that we all know achievement gaps are there before kids enter kindergarten. So too, having high quality early childhood programming will help you get the most out of your full day kindergarten investment. And now on to the kindergarten teachers.
Too many things in my hand. My name is Jen Blake, and I am an EL teacher at Highland Elementary in Columbia Heights.
Hi, I'm Mary Gamache. I'm an all-day kindergarten teacher for 6 to 2 at Carver Elementary.
And we just wanted to provide the kindergarten teacher perspective and look at kind of a typical day and a little bit of the curriculum. At Highland Elementary, we have a very high population of EL students, and I believe almost the highest in the state of free and reduced lunch population. So we looked at our curriculum and wanted to meet the needs of our students. So we start every day with the morning meeting to provide classroom community, to provide trust, and for the teacher to check in with all students and set that tone for learning for the day. Our math curriculum is everyday math, and we do a lot of partner activities to increase oral language in the classroom for English learners and students who have come from backgrounds maybe with low vocabulary. And we also have Promethean boards in each of the kindergarten classrooms and in the pre-K classroom, where we do lots of interactive math activities. Also, our calendar time is really fun because the kids can come up and move things around on the Promethean board. So, highly recommend looking for grant money for that. Our reading curriculum is called Read Well. There's a Read Well whole group, and then there's Read Well small group, and that's where myself as the EL teacher comes into each of the mainstream classrooms and collaborates with the mainstream teacher at that time. And we have usually 2 or 3 teachers in the room, each doing small groups, reading instruction, like guided reading. And then the other kids are doing a variety of activities like iPads, iPods, laptop computers, listening centers, ABC centers, to keep them all engaged in reading and literacy activities. Here's another great thing we discovered this year. They're called tag readers. They read to the kindergarten kids and they put on little headphones. So one of our teachers used the website Donors Choose and got a grant. So that's a great resource to pass on to your kindergarten teachers. We noticed from our data that our kindergartners needed more exposure to number sense. So we started using, along with our math curriculum, called Cognitively Guided Instruction, CGI. And it's a lot of number sense activities. And here the kids are doing maths and using Unifix cubes to solve word problems and develop that story or the math language with word problems. We also developed math tubs. We have a math coach in our district that worked with a variety of kindergarten teachers who were passionate about math, and they used the Common Core standards to develop all these hands-on activities for kindergarten students. So every month we have about 5 math tubs that are in the classroom and the teachers can just grab at different times. Maybe we have indoor recess, so we grab the math tubs and put them on the tables and kids can practice math activities. And they love it. They think they're just playing, but really they're learning a lot. We also implemented this year a Spanish class. We have a Spanish teacher that comes to each kindergarten and first grade classroom for 30 minutes a day. We are seeing amazing results with our EL students. Not only our students that are Spanish speakers to gain more vocabulary in their native language, but also other EL students because they're, a lot of them are bilingual, trilingual, and they're just soaring by learning another language. We also use Writer's Workshop, and this is a great opportunity to build the rigorous academic kind of stamina of the day. In the fall, when the kids are asked to write, it's about 5 minutes, and by the end of the school year, we're trying to increase their stamina to about 25 minutes. We also have FOSS science kits, which are amazing hands-on activities. In this picture, they are exploring night crawlers, so this is always a really fun day in our classrooms. We also, in our school district, have an edible schoolyard garden called Blooming Heights. And our superintendent calls it our largest FOSS kit. This is a program that I run since we have a full day kindergarten program. Half of our kindergarten day, I have a special classroom that I pull the lowest EL students, so it's all level 1 EL learners. I try to cap it at 15, but sometimes newcomers just come and you need to pull them along. So this is a half-day intensive English program where I teach content through academic language, or academic language through content of science and math and literacy. And it really gives our EL students a boost and closes that achievement gap early. And just if you are from a district where you have a high level of EL students, I just highly recommend looking at a variety of programs because throughout the morning I am inside of the classrooms, collaborating, co-teaching. I have times in my day where I'll pull out kids that need extra support, and then I also have that half-day program. So we kind of have the best of both worlds in EL in Columbia Heights.
My name's Mary Gamache, and Carver Elementary is very similar to our counterpart here, and we found that out when we were collaborating, which was very exciting. We kind of run very similar all-day kindergarten programs. We also use the responsive classroom approach, and so our kids begin each day with a morning meeting, and they absolutely love this time. They're greeted, they have a sharing time, there's a morning message which incorporates academics, so it's interactive, and then we do some sort of activity, and so it starts our day out just right. We also have a phonics word work time. Our learners come in at many different levels, but we use the Fontes and Pinnell Phonics Project, and we also use Words Their Way. So we do a combination, so our students are all learning where we meet their needs, where they're at, and we're able to bring them where they need to be for first grade. We also have a school-wide intervention model, which means all of our students have a half hour a day where they're in what we call learning groups. And those are groups for students at their specific needs. And so kindergarten is also involved in that. And I know our principals talked about that. It's something you want to think about. If you have an intervention model, kindergarten is going to be incorporated into that model. And so our students work in groups. Some leave and work with another teacher. Some are working with me. Some are working in the computer lab. So you can be very creative in how those intervention groups work. We use Writer's Workshop also. And it's just amazing to see how the students come in and their writing is a picture, and how by the end of the year they are creating multi-page stories with writing that not just a kindergarten teacher can read, but pretty much anyone can read. That's very exciting. Recess and lunch, if you ask any of our students which is your favorite time of day, they always say that much to my chagrin, that recess, lunch, that's my favorite. Another thing that you have to kind of think about, I know every year that's a big, we need support in our school when the kindergartners start the recess and lunch program. Our superintendent comes in and helps at our school to facilitate how that process works. We do have a quiet time every day. We do that right after recess and lunch to kind of avoid the sick tummy syndrome. And it is just a time for the kids to kind of de-escalate, kind of get ready to get back into the routine. It's not a nap time. It's really a time to just kind of have 10 minutes to sit, relax, and then we take care of all those bathroom breaks, all of that. We use Reading Workshop from Teachers College. It's a workshop model that incorporates a whole group mini lesson. And then there's an independent reading time and a partner reading time. At that time, teachers are conferring with students. And I have an EL cluster in my room, which means I co-teach with an EL teacher. And at that time, she is also either doing small group instruction or she is conferring with EL students. So this model is a great model for EL learners. We have specialists for all of our students. So music, physical education, STEM, we have the STEM which aligns with FOSS. We use that for science also. So works great in kindergarten. Math is Math Expressions. It's a very hands-on program if you're looking to change any curriculum. Math Expressions has a math toolkit with a lot of hands-on things. So all of the lessons are a whole group, and then the kids go back and they're using a lot of manipulatives to help them with number sense. It's a great program. We call it SASH. It's just our little acronym for Science, Art, Social Studies, and Health. And we do those on a unit-based approach to get into all the different units that would be in those areas. And then we do make time for, we call it choice activities, which are pretty chosen so that the students are doing things that are purposeful, but they think it's playtime. So there's a lot of thinking, building, connecting type of activities along with a creative play area. So like a dress up, whatever. So that time's each day, and it's great for the teacher to have that time to interact and see how the students are doing socially. Questions for anyone, so I'm going to have all of my colleagues come and join in case.
Yeah, question here for, can you hear me? Question for Jennifer. I'm interested in the half-day intensive English language program. I'm a former ESL teacher, so I have a question for that. When you take the kids, are you strictly doing language development or language through content and the content that I'm missing in the classroom? Let's say science, let's say social studies or health.
Good question.
And if so, are you incorporating the WIDA standards? And if so, how are you finding time to plan with a classroom teacher? Long question.
How much time do I have? So the KLDM program is only for level 1 EL students.
Okay.
And I pull them for an hour and a half every afternoon from the mainstream classroom. So they are missing kind of that quiet time part of the day. And in the mainstream classroom at that time, they're doing science. So that's something I would match in my classroom, and I would scaffold information for them and use a lot more vocabulary, a lot more oral language, and make it suitable for EL students. So I do a lot of pre-teaching of what they're going to be doing in the mainstream classroom. I teach other things because in the mainstream classroom they're not talking about basic words and tier 1 vocabulary, but my students need that because they're level 1s. And then I'm reteaching things, so they're getting multiple exposures, and I try to teach, like I said, the language through the content of math and through literacy. So I'm always, everything is academic in my room throughout the day. And then the WIDA standards, we're starting to dive into those. That's a lot of information. The WIDA standards, we're trying to do more professional development with that. So I'm trying to incorporate more of that, and I'm also using kind of the Common Core standards when I'm planning my day. And also we have common prep time, so I meet with the kindergarten teachers on a couple times a week and talk about what we're doing in our classroom and what our curriculum is going to look like. What is the data saying from our assessments that our kids need more of? So there's a lot of communication, and it's a really big team effort. Luckily in Columbia Heights, we have a high number of EL students, and our district has recognized that we really want EL teachers to help out with that. So we have 7 EL teachers in our K-5 building alone. So there's almost an EL teacher per grade level, and then there's also an EL teacher that floats around. So we're kind of in an ideal world for collaboration and really matching what's happening in the curriculum. So, and if you have any more questions, you can find me and I can give you some more information.
How are special education services delivered? Do those people come into the classrooms? Do they pull the kids out?
I could speak. In Columbia Heights, all of our early childhood classes, so all of our pre-K classes and many of our ECFE classes are immersion classes. A fourth of our students in each of our pre-K classes are ECSE students. So we do an immersion in our pre-K program.
What about kindergarten? All day K?
We do a combination as well, just like early childhood. About the only pull-out would be an as needed, for example, speech in a quiet setting, possibly some sensory room time, but most of our service is pushed into the classes.
622 is the exact same way. Most of our services are push-in, and then there would be those times where you may need to pull out for just special needs.
I am assuming that you're district-wide all-day K. How do you handle the parents who are not ready to let go of their 5-year-olds? Do you have a half-day option?
We didn't have a half-day option, and we had actually one parent that said they were leaving the district. So we have we had about 11,000 students when we started this, and so we get about 600 to 700 per kindergarten cohort group. So it really wasn't an issue, and we had one parent that demanded transportation for half day, and we didn't go. We were just philosophically, we're doing this for all of our children. And what I found is the one parent in our case that didn't want to do it was a higher socioeconomic and felt that they could do the job themselves and really didn't want to go to the all-day program. So they did enroll in a neighboring district. You also have the other issue if you tell a couple of things. So some districts might have more of a problem with that than others, especially if you're higher socioeconomic. So you'll have to decide, are you going to have a half-day option? That's a decision you'll have to make, probably your school board will make. The other thing is all teachers don't readily embrace this, which there are some that are very much zealots of developmentally appropriate education. And I'll tell you, I was a preschool teacher before I was a kindergarten teacher. I am a zealot for developmentally appropriate curriculum. And I only taught back in 1985, the school district that I taught kindergarten in, right after I did preschool, had all day, every day. And no, all day, alternate day, excuse me. And I just can't imagine how you could go to a half-day program and really do pure developmentally appropriate curriculum the way you want to do language and enjoy the children and literacy and and creative play and drama and storytelling. And so for me, I it's what I would want for my children, so it's easy for me to sell it. I'm passionate about it. And I have to say the few teachers that weren't supportive of it in our district have really come along, and they do beautiful jobs, and they see how you can do it just really well. And for me, it's, when I look at the equity issues, and you're much more diverse than we are, but I was in a district before this district where there were just 40% poverty, and this is 9 years ago. And back in 1985, when I went from teaching preschool to being a kindergarten teacher, I had a lot of the same children that I'd had as 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in preschool, and then all of a sudden they were in my kindergarten classroom, because it was a small town in northern Minnesota. And I'll never forget this story. The parents came with the students on the first day of kindergarten, and we did the song, we were doing Blue Pigeons Sitting on a Fence, and I talked about how we're gonna do Blue Pigeons when they came the next day. Came the next day, one of my little kids that I had as a 3-year-old and 4-year-old, he painted blue pigeons like Picasso. I mean, you could not believe that a 5-year-old painted this pigeon. And right next to him was another little boy who took the paint, and he didn't have a lot of executive function, and he kind of threw the paint, threw the paper, ran out of the classroom, and he was going to went out in the street. And I looked at the gap, and the little boy that painted the Picasso ones, his dad was a physician, and I said, how did you learn how to paint pigeons so beautiful? And he said, well, I had to do 6 last night after supper, and then this morning I had to do 4 more in between breakfast and getting to school. So I looked at those that have and those that don't. And we really need to meet the needs of all of our children if Minnesota's going to deliver that equitable education. And it needs to start earlier than kindergarten. So I'm so glad about this conference today, and I want to thank everybody for coming. And are there any other questions before I drone on anymore?
I was just going to say that in Columbia Heights, our first year, we thought in deference to some of the parents, that since it was a pilot, it was early, a lot of people weren't doing it, that we would offer a half-day program. And we had about 12 parents, for a small district, hundreds, but we had 12 parents that were just absolutely adamant that they were going to have the half-day program. And so we offered it, they arrived, and what we found is they heard so many things that were good about what was going on with the other children, and there was so much enrichment going on and some of these other activities more importantly, their children didn't want to leave. That by the beginning of the second semester, all of them were enrolled, and that was the end of any half-day offering. In Columbia Heights, because we were forecasting where we were going, we really had to have our teachers come along, and for some it was fake it until you make it. But what we found with them is that actually they learned from their peers, and we got them together collaboratively, and the enthusiasm of all the kindergarten teachers combined with the collaborators carried them through. And so that was just some strategies from our district. Back to Patty.
Any other questions? I think we get the first line for lunch, right? Thank you for